All right, Shirbrina, I think we're ready to rock. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you for celebrating International Education Week with the Green Program. Today's topic is sustainable energy careers for young professionals. I am Shirbrina Jefferson, and I traveled with the Green Program to Nepal in December of 2019. And I will open the floor for our panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Eric Vettel.
Thanks, Shirbrina. And please wave your hand if you can't hear me if there's a delay. My name is Eric Vettel. I'm the president of the American Energy Society. We're nonpartisan, energy neutral, a professional association for all energy professionals. We don't play any favorites. We have about 60,000 friends and members. By the way, it's free for all of you to join as a friend. So you can go to American Energy Society website, energysociety.org, and join as a friend for free. It's an honor and pleasure to be on this program. Thank you, Shirbrina, but it's great to be on this program with Melissa and Mike. The Green Program and DayAway, we see you guys as kind of at the forefront of this revolution, and we'll call it this green revolution. We think you're at that next step. I'll pause there. Let's keep going, and then I'll come back and do more. I'll pause there. Melissa, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to meet you or see you again. I see some familiar faces, so it's good to have you all back if you're joining us again as an alumni. I'm Melissa Lee. I'm the founder and CEO of the Green Program. What the Green Program is, if you're not familiar with us, is really focusing in on the gap, the experience gap between education and career, especially within sustainable development. Our programs are short term. They're about 10-day programs that bring the textbook to life and use the world as our classroom to study the good, bad, and ugly of sustainable development, right? So it's all about getting our hands dirty and being exposed to the world and seeing the problems before we're even able to start solving them. So that's what's important to us. Our alumni are some of you already in this room, but alumni are doing some incredible work post-program, working at places like Tesla, to NASA, to sustainability managers at major companies, nonprofit organizations. So, you know, our mission is to educate and empower future sustainability leaders to continue doing amazing work and putting their minds to work for a sustainable future. So that's a little bit more about us. I'm excited to talk more, and I'm super thrilled to have Eric and Mike from DayAway join us for this session. The last thing I'll say for now is that this session is for you. So we're going to be talking a little bit just to give you guys an update on the schedule, but we'll talk a little bit, ask some questions from our team internally, excuse me. But the second half of this event is really going to be for you all. So please get your questions ready, start thinking about them, start setting them up in the chat. And we're really excited to just, you know, help guide you and give you our advice from our experience too. But I'll pass it off to Mike from DayAway.
Hi, everybody. I am Mike Brownell, and I'm the president and founder of DayAway Careers. And one of the things that you've heard already at this point is you got to have your elevator pitch, write your story about yourself. So here's mine. A number of years ago, almost 10 years ago, my older boy wanted to get a job in sustainable energy. And, you know, I did what a lot of overbearing parents do, especially dads to boys. I stuck my nose in his business and, you know, told him he wasn't working hard enough, blah, blah, blah. But the more I looked at it, you know, I realized it was really, really tough. And this was 2009, 2010. Really tough to find a job in sustainable energy. And so that's when I started DayAway Careers. And the idea was nothing more than, you know, why do students have to weed through all these online job listings and, you know, look at stuff that doesn't require a college degree and, you know, stuff that's for a VP or whatever. And so the idea initially was start a website that will aggregate just jobs and internships for college students, entry level, and then organize them in a way so that you could look by your major, look by your degree, maybe look in a particular industry, and at least start there. And so that's kind of how DayAway started. And in part, that's what it is today. As time went on, I started talking with people who were getting these jobs. And, you know, you always ask, how did you do it? And most of them would say, you know what, I talked to A, who put me in touch with B, who put me in touch with C. And so it became clear at that point that networking, was everything. People get people jobs. And so over the past 5 or 6 years, I've spent more and more time working with people, with emails, one-on-one, whatever, to just help them, to help them network. And, part of the challenge, I think many of you know, is you talk about everything. You go to concerts together, you talk about sports and boys and girls and whatever, but, you don't really talk about jobs and internships. It's just something you don't do. And so that's a little bit of also what DayAway does. And that's in part what we're doing right here. So, I mean, it's a perfect transition to what I hope this session is to get you guys comfortable with asking questions, not just entirely being a student, getting a presentation, but engaging. And if nothing else, thinking about those kinds of questions. So there you go. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. Shirbrina, do you want to maybe now move on and sort of we start looking at some questions to warm this group up so that then they'll start raising their hand and asking their own questions?
For sure. Like, you three are definitely the people to talk to about this topic. So the first question I have is, what is the current state of green jobs, and how will the green workforce change under the Biden and Harris climate plan?
Go for the big one first, right, Shirbrina? Shirbrina, do you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, not at all.
So aiming for what's coming next. It sounds like your question is what's coming next, right? To see what's next, let me just really quickly, what have we seen? American Energy Society, we think we're in this fourth phase of what we call a green revolution. This is the fourth phase. The first phase, around 2005, it was very visionary. And by the way, it was all rooftop solar everywhere. Not a lot of impact. Then the second phase was about 2009, back, Mike, when you probably, and I think, Melissa, I don't know, when did you get started, Melissa?
Yeah, 2009, right? Exactly.
Yeah, so that's about the second phase. I'd love to hear your comments, but 2009, 2010, it was a bit broader. It was really student-driven, more so, kind of on the heels of Obama. A lot of storage, a lot of IoT software efficiency. Third phase of this revolution was 2013, and make no mistake, the shale and natural gas revolution was momentous, and I hate the word, but impactful. It was massive. And then now the fourth phase of this revolution, I think we're right at the cusp. I think Melissa and Mike, you guys are going to be really influential. And by the way, your entire audience, we consider you guys sort of the revolutionaries of this next fourth phase. Green is a great rallying cry. It's attractive, it's inspiring, it's compelling. But what is the objective? What is the mission? What's the goal? I think it's probably access and decarbonization. Access to abundant and affordable energy and decarbonization. My advice to all of you looking ahead is know and understand and appreciate and respect the tension between access and decarbonization, because it's not entirely compatible. As far as the transition, Biden, again, I think that it's appreciate scale and urgency, and understand and appreciate the tension between those two things. We need to scale. If you think back to the first phase, rooftop solar, that did not scale very well at all, which means that it didn't have the urgency. But to scale takes time. So I would understand and appreciate and respect the tension between scale and urgency, access and decarbonization. And by the way, just to conclude this point, Biden is considering, the people he's considering, Arun Majumdar, Dan Riker, Ernie Moniz, Mary Nichols, all the people he's looking to appoint all understand scale and urgency, access and decarbonization like we've never seen at the highest level. Usually it's more mission oriented. The people that Biden's team is considering is deeply aware of these bigger questions that the previous phases of the revolution tended to overlook. Sorry, Shirbrina, I hope that was a lot.
No, that was perfect. I think it's a really great insight to look into beyond more research into Biden's cabinet, who is going to put forth these environmental changes for the sustainable industry to grow.
Yeah,
So I definitely believe you
big,
put in a
big money is going to go into those solutions that scale quickly, rapidly, with urgency. A lot of money, and if it doesn't, they're not even going to bother with it. That's what we're seeing. Sorry.
I'm gonna, if I can add just a couple of points to that from a different perspective, is, when you think about the Biden transition and, the election's over and all that, it doesn't take you long to start thinking about COVID and what's the effect of that going to be on jobs for fresh grads and internships. And just a couple of points I'll lob in. I have been stunned over the past, since Corona really started hitting, since March or April, I fully expected a serious slowdown in hiring, and it just has not happened. Clean tech has, I don't think it's missed a beat. It just stuns me. Now, having said that, I think if you talk to people, you will find out that people are getting deferred offers. They're accepted, but you can't come on until, 3 months, 6 months out. A lot of people are doing work remotely, obviously. And so that's changed things. But if any of you are thinking, oh, we are so screwed because of this virus and the vaccine's not going to be out for another 3 to 6, no. The second and final point I would put in is, we're going to talk a lot, I'm sure, about networking and talking to people. And maybe now more than ever, using digital resources to find jobs, find internships, using LinkedIn to reach out and talk to people. Let's face it, there's nothing as good as going to a seminar or going to Iceland or going to Peru or going to one of Eric's events. But, to some extent, the in-person stuff is going to be cut back. And so, digital's the way to go. And now it's probably more of an open door than ever because of that, because this is just how people are having to work. And so using LinkedIn, using whatever resources you can, using DayAway to find people and to hear their story and to find out about jobs and to make contacts, because again, people get people. So that to me is sort of a COVID implication of this.
I'll add one thing, because I know we have other questions to get to as well, but somebody mentioned green jobs being very mission oriented from the beginning, and that is amazing, and we need to continue that mission for sure. But what's even more fascinating, I think, is the economic drivers behind what's happening with the green economy and the green workforce as well. And that's just adding more leverage to the why and the mission behind this direction, right? So when we're looking at jobs and high growth jobs, by 2026, the Bureau of Workforce Development and Labor Statistics are all saying that the two highest growth jobs by 2026, 105% increase for solar, and wind installation is another 95% increase in those jobs that we're seeing by 2026. By 2025, talking about economics and renewables versus coal, there's studies out there that say that it will be more expensive to be continuing to run our existing coal plants than it is to just build an additional solar and wind farm right next to those coal plants as well. So those are other reasons that we have to take account for what is happening with the workforce. And it's not just maybe the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do. And we're finally in this place where the cost of wind, the cost of solar are dropping drastically now, to the point where it is cheaper than other forms of energy too. So I just want to add that point too, in terms of why these jobs are more important now than ever before.
Yeah, that was great. Everyone brought up amazing points of how, again, our industry is growing, and great words of encouragement for people that are graduating during these times of I know myself graduating from Rutgers, one of the main worries was, where am I going to go next? Where's the next job? Where's the next internship? And just knowing, again, just adapting digitally is the next step for that. And I also wanted to know, what are top skills that employers are seeking in green tech and in energy?
So I'll kick us off. I would say, when I look at, all the people that are getting in, 2/3 are engineers or in the science, in the science field. And among those, probably on the engineering slot, half of the engineers are MEs or EEs. So you're seeing a lot. What's interesting about the engineers, the majority of those people, I think, go into roles that are traditional engineering roles, but for a solar company or for a clean tech company. There are also a fair amount of engineers who use their engineering education sort of indirectly. They're analytical, they're quantitative, they understand how to solve problems. And my favorite story is, and it happens, it seems like now once a month, it's usually a mechanical engineer who I'll be talking to, and it's usually a he, and he will say, I don't want to do that engineering stuff. I want to be a sick, rich venture capital dude. I want to get into finance. And, I sort of scratch my head and go, so why aren't you a finance major? But, it's a different world. And the reality is, it doesn't slow them down one bit. And there are some incredible success stories about engineers getting into non-traditional engineering roles and, ultimately becoming CEOs, CFOs, whatever. Of the remaining, whatever's left, what you're seeing is the environmental science group, liberal arts generally, sort of softer business. And, those guys, they have a little tougher time getting in. But if you are in that group, one of the things I think you should think about in terms of specific skills is, by far and away, the most, the widest door to go through, if you're not an engineer, would be project management, into some sort of a project management support role. Business development is also a key way to get in. And, some of the business development jobs are really good, more analytical. Others are awful, knock on doors and commission only. And I know, because that older boy I talked about, that's how he kind of got into clean tech. And then general analyst roles, and things like that. So that's, I guess I'd say I'll kick things off with that. Those are sort of I think the skills that people are using to get in. Who wants to add to that?
I can add to that. So I know at the Green program, what we're doing is also integrating a whole other component of international education and experience too. So just across the job market in general, there is an increase of a need for problem solving. Whether you're an engineer or any type of major, right? How have you applied certain experiences? And what specific outcomes have you used to practice these skill sets? So problem solving, creativity, analytical thinking, exactly what Mike was talking about too, cultural awareness, cross-disciplinary work with people who are from different backgrounds than yourself, right? And this touches on a question that came into the chat, but we also had to think modern day challenges. So virtual or remote work or collaboration or management should also be a skill set that you all have, you're practicing right now, right? Just being here. So make sure you're adapting your skill sets to what's needed and how you think, if you're applying to a job right now, these are the things that they're going through, that they're looking for people with this sort of experience. So those are a few different skill sets that I would say as well. I think interpersonal communication is really big. That's a big one that our students leave our programs with as well. And at the end of it all, like for Green program, what's really important, because we're so focused on sustainable development, is industry IQ, which we can talk about a little bit more as well. But this idea of, do you want, like, it doesn't matter what your background or education is, but can you hold a conversation about load balance or peak performance for different energy, right? Or carbon offsetting, for example. Like, what are sustainability practices that you can just talk about with industry IQ with the right terms too. So these are some examples that we can talk about.
Hey, Melissa, you know what,
Yeah.
your point is great. It's more than just talk, right? If you're in solar, you darn well better understand what's going on in natural gas, or you're going to get left behind, right?
Yeah, good point.
If you're in you know, nuclear, you better know what's going on in coal and carbon capture, or you're going to get left behind. I mean, you have to have that energy intelligence beyond your own sector. That's probably one of the greatest changes since 2005, right? I mean, and I appreciate the people attending now. There's greater awareness and a willingness to be more aware of beyond just your own little myopic world. I think, Melissa, you make a really good point. Really good point.
Yeah, I agree, Melissa, talking about the points of industry IQ. I've never heard that phrase before, but when she described it, it makes total sense because, again, once you have an interview, the main part of the interview is also the relationship, if you communicating your knowledge. And a follow-up question to being able to communicate your knowledge, the first thing that comes to an employer is your resume. So how can students or young professionals cater their resume or their skill sets to the employer, particularly in sustainability or clean energy?
Hey, Mike, this one's for you, but Melissa, I'm so sorry to ask, what is this audience? It's always nice to know who this audience is. Is it primarily STEM? Is it primarily liberal arts, humanities? How do I'd love to know.
That's a great question. I think everyone, if you guys can, and if you have access to the keyboard, please throw in some of your information, introduce yourselves into the chat. I'm sorry, that's usually something we do in the beginning, so we missed that part, but let's do that. But I will say mostly a mix of students, young professionals. Green program traditionally has a majority of STEM students, but students from all disciplines come in our programs as well.
I mean, if it's just even that broadly STEM or humanity, I'm just really curious. Whoa, here we go.
Yep.
And see, then you start to realize communication. I mean, for engineers and people in STEM, learn how to communicate. Oh my goodness, and understand the humanities. Not just because can technology solve the problem, but should we, right? And as far as the humanities, like you said, Melissa, energy intelligence, energy literacy, make sure you understand the technical side so you can challenge the solutions providers, right? But sorry, Mike, this one's yours. How do you build a resume? And LinkedIn profile, like you said, Mike, right? And LinkedIn profile, use it.
No, a couple of things come to mind. Most importantly is make sure the resume reflects the excellent points that have been made over the past 5 minutes. You know, energy IQ, making sure you emphasize the macros, the buzzwords are really important, which really gets to another point, and that is, and this may sound a little obscene to people, but from the time I was your age, and especially when I was hiring in my career, I hate resumes, and I think most recruiters hate them too. So a couple of points: don't overthink it, be brief, get to the point. For God's sakes, and this is just my personal opinion, don't go 2 pages. You know, a one page resume. What really hit me was, you know, later in my career when I was a corporate lawyer, I mean, we were hiring people that were going to make $500,000 or $1 million a year. And I mean, these are people who have done amazing things. 1 page resumes, lots of white space. So if that's true at that level, then, you know, who are you at 22 to, you know, lob in a 3-page resume? But I think keep it brief. And I think you use rich words that really, you know, if it's supply chain, project management, get the keywords, the buzzwords out there, either so that they get picked up in parsing, or just simply if somebody is looking at it. I think that's really important. And I guess I would keep emphasizing the point about industry IQ, and remember that an employer who's considering you seriously wants you to be passionate about them and what you want to do. So this point's maybe a little more about a cover letter and your interview online than it is the resume. But, you know, this isn't just sell yourself. This isn't just, you know, I'm a great student. I got into this wonderful school. I got great grades. See me, see me. You want to show your passion and your interest for that industry into which you're applying and the company that you're applying to. So it's not just about you, it's about your connection to them. And to the extent it is about you, it's emphasizing the linkage between what you are spectacular at and how it will contribute to that company. How are you going to help them make money? And again, I said early on, if any of that's offensive or off-putting, I apologize, but as you can tell, I believe in it.
I would add to that too is just to touch on the buzzwords and how important that is, especially when you're looking at large corporations. So I can't imagine, I don't know if this is true, but a large company like NASA or Tesla going hand picking through each individual printed out resume. What a lot of these companies are using are algorithms, right? So what we want to be looking at is the job description when you're building your resume. I would do it side by side, that job description and the buzzwords that you're pulling into your resume. Same action words, as long as it's true, of course, but you know, being able to tie in the similar lingo that they are using because that is what their system is pulling through, even if you want to get through that first round of resume checks with that company. Mike, would you agree with that?
100%.
Those are fantastic recommendations.
Hey, Shirbrina, can I just tell a quick story? Is that okay? Caitlin, I noticed Caitlin asked a question about how do you talk about sustainability, and in the chat. Can I just have a quick kind of funny story, I think. Like Melissa's saying, like Mike's saying, very practical, very good, you know, make sure that your LinkedIn profile, you have the buzzwords, you show your energy intelligence, you show that you can talk outside of your own sector. But higher order thinking, really that analytical, critical thinking skill where you can kind of raise that question, the challenging question that the people who are hiring are probably thinking about, but may not ask in the interview. And I'll give you an example just really quickly. There's this amazing program, a bunch of engineers at Berkeley teamed up with Lawrence Berkeley Lab and a couple of groups in Oakland, and they recognized, it was around 2010-ish, they recognized that there are people who don't have access to energy and need it, cheap, affordable, clean energy. And they identified a couple islands in the Philippines that didn't have access to electricity, and they had a problem with food spoiling, with food rotting, with bacteria, et cetera. And so they designed this really cheap, amazing system where it was integrated a refrigerator with a solar panel with a battery, and they built this thing. It was amazing. They won an award from the Department of Energy, and they shipped off, I think, a couple dozen to these remote islands in the Philippines, and dropped them off, showed them how it worked, dropped them off, and then came home. And then 6 months later went back to look at how great this solution was. They were ready to do an assessment of what they achieved. And every single one of the systems, the solar, refrigeration, and battery storage, every single one had been dismantled and turned into rooftop because they needed the rooftop for protection, for shelter. They came away thinking, darn, I wish we had thought of that. That's the sort of conversation, I think, Melissa, you're talking about, right? That high order, Mike, that you got to be able to know that. That's the question that the people interviewing will want to hear you say.
I would also add to that just by saying, you know, now that everything's virtual, sign up for their events before you apply. See what they're talking about, see what's going on internally, see what's top of mind for them as an organization and what they're interested in. And just watch, observe. You can learn so much from observing, whether it's virtual or traveling to a different country, right? So those are things that I think are at our advantage now in a virtual world when you're looking for jobs in a career, especially with sustainability. And back to Mike's point about you get jobs through people. Ask people who know people in that organization through LinkedIn, right? You have that opportunity to reach out to people who are like second degree or third degree of connections. And you can have conversations with people and ask what initiatives are going on and what challenges they're going through and facing. Some companies might not even be interested in sustainability, to be honest, still. So make sure, you can either pick that battle and go down that route. I'm not saying that's not worth the fight. It definitely is. But I also think that there's companies out there who are actively looking for the help to become more sustainable as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like the underlying theme that everyone talked about is engagement. And I know during this time of COVID-19, we were all physically isolated, but digitally we have been connected, and we have a lot of great resources like LinkedIn or Zoom, even to communicate with people we may not have spoken with in person because we would have to go through resume checks and etc. So I think it is a great resource to take advantage of right now to adapt to the changes that we're experiencing now. And we're halfway through our session, so I want to jump into our viewer questions. So I have one question from Sam Wallace, and he wanted to know, how do you determine whether technical or more business, consulting, or policy-driven work is your thing with regards to sustainable energy?
Shirbrina, could you repeat that one again? Because I'm probably the one to kick this one off, but I got some of it, but not all. I'm also looking for it here on the.
Okay, no problem. Sam's question was, how do you determine whether technical or more business, consulting, or policy-driven work is your thing with regards to sustainable energy?
Yeah. Well, I think the short answer is they're both relevant. And, one of the things that a question that comes up a lot is people saying, well, what, should I go more technical or should I go more business oriented? And the answer is, you've got to look into your soul and determine what it is you really like to do and what you don't want to do. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are just huge amounts of jobs on the technical side, whether it's engineering or whether it's more on data analytics or computer science or, deep finance. At the same point, there are a ton of jobs that are, that require less technical experience as well. And I think I mentioned, anything to do with project management, analyst roles are extremely important because, remember, businesses, they're at different stages, right, in their growth. And so early on, if your goal is you really want to work for a startup and you want that excitement of, the entrepreneurial environment, then, the reality is they're probably not going to be as much into sales. They're going to be more developing a product and refining the product. There's going to be more research and development. So, in a context like that, it's probably going to be a little heavier on the technical side. As, Eric talked earlier about scale. If we want to change the world, make an impact, we need businesses that are scaling. And as businesses start to scale, right, now you're getting more into business development. You're getting into efficiencies, improving efficiencies in operations. And that's where it's opening it up for people who have less of a technical background because they're looking for, again, improved operational efficiencies, or they need an economics major or an environmental science major to do analytics on sales opportunities. Where are the best markets? Or looking at competitor intelligence. These are things that a bright mind can pick up. And I was really encouraged here. I've been looking through some of the comments coming into the chat. And I mean, we've got majors, right? Everything from, serious physics and engineering to, well, I should be careful creating a continuum like that. But okay, so we've got people all over, the board here. And there's just plenty of opportunity out there for everyone. Who wants to add to that?
I can add. I'm a believer in experience is everything, which is why the green program exists too. But whether it's the green program or any other program, whether it's vocational training, I'm a huge supporter of hands-on learning and training too. So it depends on how technical we're talking about for that question, Sam. But There's a lot of, specific solar training specifically out there that are lots of certifications going on that, unfortunately right now we do need to look outside of your existing standard higher education to get more hands-on training and certificates too. So that's what I would add to that.
Hey, I want to add one more thing because I get to do a little advertisement for the site. So, one of the things is be thinking about what your major is and having some sense of what job titles are out there for that. So I'll tell you what, if people at some point go out to our website, so go out to DayAwayCareers.com/sustainable energy careers. And just to, because this is called augmented reality screen share, all right? And Eric may be nonpartisan, but as you can see, I'm not. But anyway, so there's
Hey, Mike, I'm here, so I'm partisan. It's just I'm not going to say it.
So anyway, by the way, that's sustainable-energy-careers. There's a table out there, and the table is going to show majors, so like chemies, double E's, economics, environmental science, and then next to them you'll see job titles. And I think it's kind of a cool way to sort of get a sense of, and by the way, I stripped out all the information of the real people that, have these jobs. So, a privacy thing, but these are real people working at real companies. And this will give you a little sense of what's out there for you. And then also you can, if you poke around the website on the homepage, you'll find other ways to find more information. And then we've also got some other stuff out there that you might want to reference when we're all done here to get more information on TGP and the Energy Society. Sorry, I'm done.
That was great. And then Carly shouted your website out in the chat for anyone that didn't get a chance to see. It's DayAwayCareers.com. And then we have another question from Nathaniel for Mike and Eric. He asks, do you think location will become less important following COVID, given the rise of remote working? And he mentioned that he has found really personal the ability to attend remote conferences to be super helpful, but was wondering if that may spread to internships and jobs.
Mike, you want to take I can offer just a contextual.
Why don't you throw up whatever your anecdotal in there is?
Sure. Strategic location, yes. I mean, and just from personal experience, we look to bring on people that are located in regions that we want to connect with. And I have to believe that other companies do the same thing. I think strategic location, you can be anywhere. Having said that, proximity always matters. That's why we do it, because we need people on the ground in that location. So Mike is probably going to add a lot of really detail, which is good because he's right. It depends, and then you get to hear what the on the ground sounds like. Go ahead, Mike.
When I was really early in my career, this manager guy asked me a question, and I began my answer with, I think, and he just stopped me cold and said, do you think or do you know? And it's something I've carried with me all my life. When you give advice to people or information, do you know this to be true or do you think? And what I'm about to say is purely speculative. I honestly don't know how things are going to change as a result of COVID. I do think that we are seeing some benefits of working remotely, and we are experiencing some efficiencies, and in some cases, maybe some optimal outcomes that we're able to do, and obviously cost cutting, and the like. Having said that, and working with, people in their 20s and 30s for 10 years now, I just can't imagine there being a wholesale shift away from in-person working. And I just think, collaboration, the social need that people have. I mean, I know for a fact right now, young folks are just dying as a result of just not being able to be together or to be together, the way that we want. And again, I'm I can't anchor this into any data or, information from an Excel file or, a cool study or anything. But no, I think as a general matter, once we get through what we're trying to get through right now, I think things will largely go back to, to the way they are. And there'll be some instances where, we've figured out ways to use Zoom and we figured out ways to do other things remotely. But in the end, I think personally, we return to largely the way we were.
Thank you. I'm sure we're all looking forward to going back into the workforce and being connected with our friends and family in person. Another question from Caitlin is, how can Gen Z and millennials challenge and convince top executives to implement a green strategy when most of us are starting at the entry level? In other words, how can we have our voices heard in a traditionally hierarchical corporate organization?
I think you'd be surprised at how many boards and top level executives are already talking about it. I honestly, if you're entry level, like Mike said, unless you're at a very small startup, and even then, the startup isn't. They're talking about it. Don't fool yourself. They may be talking about it and say we don't want to go in that direction, but I guarantee they're talking about it.
What I would add to that is, I think the more you can show how green initiatives will make people money or save people money, the more you're going to get people's attention. And I think that's what's really cool about what's going on now is, Eric and Melissa and I all got into this roughly the same time. And just as regards green energy, solar and wind, 10 years ago, it was a lot more expensive. And so, the pitch was, yeah, but, it's good for the climate. And yeah, but the point was you were heading into the wind because it just was more expensive. Well, now things have changed, and you look at the price of electricity coming from some of the large wind turbines. You look at solar and even without incentives, and Eric will know more about this than I would. It's reached parity in some cases it's cheaper. So, and that's just a small example. I realize there's lots of people on the call that, sustainable energy isn't, it's sustainability they're interested in. So again, I think the way you can show that this is going to save a business money, save cost, or it's going to generate revenue. And that may not be your first way of thinking because you've been schooled to think more about policy, or you've been thinking about, the harmful effects of, the importance of decarbonization. But don't be shy about showing the economic impacts of this, positive economic. And again, the cool thing is they're there. They're really there. And by the way, it's not, the economic impact is sneakier than you think. Electric cars, when they first came out, was the same deal, right? The Prius, which was a hybrid electric, or Tesla. And it was all about, well, to some extent it was about, these are cheaper, these will save you money, and they'll put less pollution in the air. But one thing that's happened is, and Tesla is kind of the reason for this, is it's the cool factor. It's like the car's just flat out cool and it's fast. If you ever drive an electric car, you can't believe the acceleration. And so, that's another example of how a consideration is going to help usher in a green product. And, to the point with the electric cars, they're now Rivian and the truck, and you're going to find contractors, once they start figuring out, the torque and the hauling capability of electric cars, they're never going to go back. So anyway, I guess that would be my challenge point as far as zero in on how this is going, how your idea or somebody's idea is going to save a business money or make a business money. It'll get you noticed.
Yeah, just to add, because I know we have a lot of other questions, to Caitlin's point, I just want to make a note here that it doesn't always need to be the top executive that you're convincing. There are lots of subdivisions or groups within larger organizations, of course, that are working on this already. You just need to find the right people. There are CSR, which is corporate social responsibility departments, who are literally dedicated. Their job is to do corporate social things, responsible things for the company, a lot of them which are environmentally related as well. So you don't have, it's not your job, you don't have to convince the CEO of the company, you might just have to find the right department. So it's a lot about who you're talking to as well. So just make sure you're picking the right person to have that conversation with. They might already be a few steps ahead than you realize.
That's an excellent point, Melissa. I didn't even think to go to a separate department or a separate entity besides the CEO. I love that point. And then move on to another master's degree for entry-level positions, especially for engineers not in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. Can 2 years of relevant internship suffice enough?
I heard bits and pieces of that question, but the good news is I saw it earlier in the chat. I think if a business is specifically looking for a master's degree, they're not going to look upon internship experience as a substitute for that. I mean, that's just my sharp opinion on that. Melissa, did you, or Eric, did you, I'm going to try to look for the rest of the question here. Was there anything that you wanted to?
Yeah, Megan just posted it in the chat, but the full question is, how important is a master's degree for entry-level positions, especially for engineers not in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering? Can 2 years of relevant internships suffice instead?
Okay. No, a master's degree is not that important. Now, if I looked at our database for, we've got probably a couple of thousand people, I would say, maybe 40% are graduate degree, either masters or MBAs, PhDs as well. So the bulk of people that I'm tracking do not have a master's degree. And so, there, again, tons of opportunities, and I'm not going to repeat myself again, but again, whether you're undergrad in engineering STEM or whether you're, in everything else, plenty of opportunities there. Probably a related question to that is, does a master's degree help? And the answer is yeah. There are going to be some opportunities where people are absolutely looking for masters. I know somebody asked a question about data analytics. That's an area where I think it's important. Anybody else want to add to that? Or we can go to the next question.
You can jump to the next question. I found this question to be interesting. Would you recommend any sources or websites where we could get industry intelligence?
I'm going to put it in the chat. I have one. It's us.
Got him.
That's what we do.
I'm gonna put something in there as well. If there are and I'm gonna broaden it just a little bit to not just sites, but also organizations that they have sites, but they're going to be very useful as well. And if people at some point go out to, well, again, that page that I talked to you about earlier, never mind. If you go out to, there's an insights section on DayAway, you'll see articles. There's one there called Student-Friendly Sustainability Organizations. And there's probably 10 or 20, obviously, the Energy Society and TGP and DayAway Careers. But some other ones that are really good are the Clean Energy Leadership Institute. I would highly recommend. I think they're a fantastic group. Young Professionals in Energy is a really good group. And these are organizations. Yeah, they got the website. but they've also got chapters, or, they're organized so that at least in the major metro areas, there's usually a chapter where there used to be meetings and you could have drinks, and I don't know exactly what they do now, but those meetings are going to be coming back. Student Energy is another, it's a Canadian-based organization, but they're active in the US. And certainly if you're an international student, I would highly recommend looking at Student Energy. But again, check that article out about student-friendly organizations, and I think you'll find a ton of good references there.
I'll add to something that hasn't been brought up yet in this conversation is the importance and power of mentorship. You can be signing up for all the newsletters, all the events. You can be, coming in live or watching recordings. That's all helpful. You can, of course, be coming on things like the Green Program and actually getting hands-on physical experience, tangible experience too. But also being able to tap into having mentors that are already in the industry, in the fields. Just have coffee, virtual coffee, if you will, like just being able to talk to them, like what's going on in the industry now. Very similar to the conversation that we're having today. I think that goes a long way, and we overlook that a lot.
Thank you everyone for providing some extra resources and ideas for young professionals to start the next chapter in their lives. I'm sure we have time for one more question, or maybe two. There was another question of what are some spaces to watch out for in energy efficiency? Is it poised to grow on the same scales of solar and storage?
If I just really quickly, depends on where you're talking about. I think Melissa's going to have some really interesting insights. Energy efficiency is not necessarily a thing in regions that don't have access to energy. They're not thinking energy efficiency because they have zero, right? Or something close to that. So there's a billion, 2 billion people who don't think about energy efficiency and don't care. But then you've got the other end of the spectrum, primarily in the West, US, Western Europe, where energy efficiency is huge, right? Energy saved or energy not used, that's an interesting one. Not just efficiency, but conservation. Energy not used is also a solution too. It's huge, massive in certain regions.
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric. I would say that a lot of in terms of sustainable development and what we're seeing internationally, is that while the major players, as in major polluters like the US, China, there's big countries like Japan, South Korea, we're all moving now, I can say this, moving towards sustainable development and a sustainable clean future for our energy infrastructures. But when you're looking at all the other countries in the world that are not contributing very much to the CO2 emissions in the world, but they're at the brunt and facing all of the problems firsthand, before myself sitting in Philadelphia might, see it. What we're seeing there is what they're doing in these developing countries is leapfrogging, which basically means they're skipping the entire industrial revolution that we just went through, and they're going straight for renewables, especially now that costs are lower. And it makes more sense, for them. So again, that economic factor, the timing is huge right now for the world and the direction that we're hitting. So I do think actually that it's optimistic in other countries where we're going, and what we're seeing too in terms of they see it as a solution and they're chasing after it pretty clearly as well.
No, that's great. Do you believe we have time for one more question?
Let's do it.
I have to bow. So, and if you guys keep going, I have to go to another one. But if I could just make one last comment, Melissa and Mike, do you mind?
Go for it, yeah.
I just want to share this with we all are, I'm not saying this group and this conversation, everywhere we go, you see this momentum. It'll shift to fossil, it'll shift to renewable, it'll shift to sustainable, it'll shift to green. We're going to see a shift to the greener, sustainable, more efficient. That's where we're going to see that hype curve. We're going to see.
Eric, if you can hear us, we just lost you. Cliffhanger.
I wouldn't always look at them as the enemy either, because there's carbon capture. Uh-oh, I've
Oh,
lost it.
you're back. You're back.
Okay, there's carbon capture. There's all sorts of other ways for those groups to actually have an impact. And accessibility. They're not going away. There's this, I'll pause there. They're not going away.
Yeah,
Eric.
and I would double down on just storage. And personally, what's really been interesting to me that I've been continuing to keep an eye on is space-based solar. Curious to get in your thoughts, Eric, on a different conversation on that as well, but using our solar system with solar panels and the future of that. So I think it's going to be high efficiency, high storage, cheap renewable energy is what's going to be the pros moving forward there. But Mike, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
I just wanted Eric to hear my clever little quip here, that for all of you on, viewing this, you'll remember Eric Vettel as the guy who's so passionate about this that he blew out the internet on his end. And, that is the ultimate, that is the best evidence of somebody who really, really cares about this stuff.
Just need more reliable energy. I have to go. I'm so sorry, Melissa, Shirbrina, Mike, thank you so much. Thank you. Everybody, we're connect with me on LinkedIn. We've got a couple part-time, 20-hour a week, managing editor of our magazine position, a lot of things. So connect with me.
There you guys go. Jobs right there. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Hey, Shirbrina, how about the last question being the one on international? There's something there about our international students getting hired or whatever. Did you see that one out there?
Oh, yes. From Miriam, she asked, do you see international students in the sustainability field hired fairly, easily, or does it represent a disadvantage?
This is a wonderful question for Melissa and I to speak to. And I'm going to go first because there are a number of aspects of what I do that I'm very passionate about. And one of them is working with international students. And by that, what I mean, I don't know if this is the right definition, I mean young men and women who are born outside the United States come to the US to go to school. And I will tell you this, first of all, no, they're not getting hired easily. But secondly, they are getting hired. And there are so many fascinating, just wonderful stories about international students getting jobs, in the US. And it's a frustration for me because anybody who is an international student knows that, meritocracy being considered, these are some of the best students in the US. And they prove it. They prove it objectively. The US colleges love them. They're good for the numbers. They're just bright kids. They're hard workers. They've done all the right things. And so our colleges and universities welcome them. As soon as they graduate, it's hell to get a job beyond your OPT. And, so you're good for 2-3 years and, you got a tough way to go. Now, so then the point is, well, so what about these success stories, and how are they doing it? And, the number one thing is you got to be talking to people. So if you are an international student, the number one thing you got to be doing is talking to other international students who graduated a year or 5 years earlier and got in. That's where you'll start getting some insight as to the companies that are sponsoring more so than others. They tend to usually be bigger companies. And then I think you've also, you've got to believe what I'm telling you, that there are just tremendous numbers of these people who are meeting with success and getting in. And then I guess the thing I didn't say is I spend hours every week with emails, back and forth to people about what they're doing. And hands down, the international students are the hardest working bunch of all. Just not even close. And again, I've got a boy who's, 40 feet away and he's not an international student. And, I understand the US born kids, but, they can do it. I could go on forever about this, but Melissa, hopefully there's a springboard there for you to jump on and just really pile on.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is what we've been seeing in our experience too. I think you bring up a really good point about, again, one of the first things that you said today was people get people jobs. So, use your time strategically, use your time and be smart with the people who you're connecting with too. So I love the idea of finding students who were or are in your shoes and just sharing the knowledge, sharing the thoughts, sharing the network, and making sure you're spending the time on the companies who have those structures already set up, and also appreciate international students and international knowledge too. On that note, I'll also add that, I'm assuming that question was more US based, but if you can't find it here, the rest of the world is thriving right now on renewable energy jobs. And I know so many of our students, we ran a survey one year and a majority of our students said that they would go anywhere for a job. Like this is the generation where we're just like, let's move, let's live in a different place, a different world, do something different, live out of our camper vans, like whatever, we want to do that. So I think that, the world is your oyster when it comes to these opportunities. And I'll leave it on that note for now too, but yeah, it doesn't stop within the US for sure, if it's not possible.
Great, thank you, Mike and Melissa. And I know we went a little bit over, so I thank you to all the viewers that joined us with this conversation. I saw that a lot of you have put your LinkedIn bios in the chat, and that's awesome. I hope you all stay connected after this panel talk and stay encouraged to continue on to see the many talks we have for the rest of the week for International Education Week. So thank you again for tuning in, and thanks, Mike and Melissa. It was inspiring having this conversation with you too.
Thank you, Shirbrina. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Hope to see you the rest of the week.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.